Not my fault.
Okay, Donald Trump, nothing's ever your fault.
Okay. Okay, it's your fault.
No,
You're on, Dave.
I'm on. I'm
All
always
right.
on.
All right. And I think you're good to go here. Let me see. Yeah, I think you're good to go.
All right, well, let's try it then again, brother.
You're on. You're literally on the air right now. And it looks like your volume's fine.
Well, we'll have to see.
All
Uh,
right. So let me
ladies
get
and
the
gentlemen,
comment section up. And folks, those of you who were nice enough and patient enough to stay on, please tell us whether you can hear us.
you
We'll
know,
just.
Brian, while we're kind of doing that because it's kind of ridiculous to talk. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, Brian has a tough job. Um, I mean, he has to remember to put on pants first
All
of all.
right. The audio is screwing up again.
No, it's not. What happens is, so that's the first thing. He has to remember to put on pants. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. And then he has to host the show, and his he's not real quick on the trigger. He has to think of things to say. But did you ever notice, ladies and gentlemen, that whenever there are technical problems, it's always my mic, my camera, and when I say mine, I don't mean that. Where Brian is controlling it. And if I were a paranoid or any kind of person, I would think Brian was trying to minimize my chances of being successful with this show. But I don't know that Brian would do that deliberately. But what I would say is I would appreciate if people would chime in tonight and say if one of the mics had to go down, would you rather it be Brian's mic or my mic? I think that'll be a true indication of the intelligence of our audience. So again, the question tonight on the floor, you can respond at any time. I'll bring it up again. If one of our mics goes down, would you prefer it to be Brian's mic or my mic?
I told you, folks, he doesn't stop talking.
Oh no, I won't stop. No,
I
I'm not
don't
making him
think
talk.
in 4 weeks they've actually heard me, Dave. I think it's been
Well,
you the whole
that's kind
time.
of sad. Then
It
there
is
go
kind
our
of
ratings.
sad. Well, nonetheless, Dave, you know, I was looking at our group page over the last few days, and I noticed the intensity, the frustration, the impatience, all the things wrapped up into one that I think you and I feel, and it's getting to a lot of people. I mean, you can just see from the intensity of the comments, and they're all basically anti-Trump comments because it is a partisan page. Do you have any inkling or feeling what's going to happen because the tensions are so high? What do you think is going to happen if we get into a November 3rd where Trump really does pull this off a cheat? Where do we go? Just looking at our page, you can see it's only September. Where are we going to go with these things if
Well,
if it does
of course,
happen?
you have to prepare for the fact that anything can happen, right? If 2020 has shown us anything, that's it, right? We really don't know. So again, I'll start with some things I've repeated, but nothing has changed. Um, can Trump win? No. If the election is fair, he cannot. Now, why do I say it even more emphatically than I said it when we started this show? Well, let me review a couple points there. Initially, I said that before there was a Joe Biden as a nominee, I said that all the Democratic nominee has to do, the only thing that person, be it male, female, black, white, anybody with any sense knows they would be a better president than Trump. But forget that just for a moment. What would happen is all that person had to do was win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They were the three losses that cost Hillary Clinton the election. Okay. Um, we now have the team. I think it's a very strong team. I really do. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm settling for anybody. And I'll tell you why, based on that theory, that those three states are crucial. I don't think you could find a better Democratic candidate for Pennsylvania than Joe Biden. He's known historically as Pennsylvania's third senator. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Everything's going for him. I like HLS's thinking. I'm kind of agreeing with you there. But Brian, it goes like this. So Pennsylvania, you got to give the edge. Now that's one. Secondly, Michigan. I would think that Michigan has to give some props to Joe. He has a pretty good record of working with unions, and he and President Obama, of course, bailed out the auto industry, which is Michigan's largest employer. That leaves Wisconsin. Wisconsin goes back and forth. The last election it had, the midterms, very much a progressive Democratic state, so it looks good. Now, I don't think Joe Biden is going to win Texas, and I don't think Joe Biden is going to win Florida, and definitely not Florida because they've learned to cheat long before anyone else. He won't take Georgia, but all that doesn't matter. And I understand the polls and how are they different and this and I could spend hours on the polls. I've studied them, and I'm not a big fan of polls. But what I would say is one statistic everyone should forget is what the national polling says. I don't care if Joe Biden is ahead 40 percentage points. The largest lead I've seen is 12, 10. But you have to remember, it doesn't matter where you are nationally. Hillary Clinton got, what, 3 million more votes? It matters in the electoral college. It matters in the states. But even there, I see Joe Biden emerging victorious. Now, you asked a very fair question. What happens if he doesn't win?
Because remember, Dave, if I can go back to what I said,
Right. Right. Well, okay. Well, I mean, first of all, if indeed Trump wins, we're going to have to figure out, like you said, personally how to do it. But that doesn't mean that there's other factors. Well, there's going to be a redundancy here.
by
Other
the way, Dave,
factors
if I can
factored
just,
in.
Dave, I'm going to stop. I got to stop for a second. I accidentally, I screwed up. I did screw up. I just want to tell everybody. I basically told Dave, it was on silence, that I felt that even myself, someone who doesn't get depressed, I've had this morose feeling, and I've seen all the comments on Divided We Stand, the tension, the almost depressive feeling throughout the group, and this is going throughout the country. How are we emotionally going to be able to take this until November? And then I said to Dave that I know it's an open-ended question, but it's something that I'd like him to try to answer, and that's where he's going right now. Sorry, Dave.
So what you're saying, Brian, is 3 times tonight you have silenced me, and I'm supposed to.
No, I was silenced, not you. I silenced
That's
myself.
fine. I'm silent.
Okay.
Oh, good Lord. There's no problem there. So let me sum up what I just said real quickly. Okay. The scenario that I see is Joe Biden winning. Boom. I'll discuss. Anybody wants to ask me that, why I feel that way, fine. But it is not a certainty until it happens, correct?
Correct.
Let's assume that it is the worst case scenario, that on December the 7th, I don't know, November the 21st, if it takes some time, Donald Trump is certified the winner. You have you really have a couple of things you have to worry about. You were speaking more from the emotional end.
Right. Because that's what you have to live with every day.
It would be soul crushing for the moment. Okay, it would be like you'd worked all your life, to get to the Super Bowl, and on the very last
You
play,
drop the ball.
you somehow drop the ball, or you let in the winning touchdown or whatever. However, that depends if you're putting everything on this election. Now, a lot rides on it. And I've said it, you've said it, most people have said it. Joe Biden says the soul of America. But this is just one battle in a long fight, Brian. Okay? Whether Trump wins or loses, you still have three other huge factors out there. You have the Republican Party that has enabled him beyond anything I can understand, although Michael has talked to some Australian people, and maybe I could share their views, which are kind of interesting, an outside view of that, because we're kind of close to it to understand. You have what I call the Trumpites, and to be honest with you, there's really no Republicans and conservatives, as far as I'm concerned, left voting for Trump. You're either a Trumpite or you've sold your republicanism or conservatism because you're an elected official or an appointed official or whatever, working for the enemy being Donald Trump. But two things could happen if he wins. If Republicans wow, I talk well. If Republicans can maintain control of the Senate, our job becomes damn near impossible, but we can't give up. But let's assume.
But they don't get what they want. That's the good thing about that.
No. I said the Republicans maintain control.
No, I'm saying I understand that. But if we get the presidency,
both. In other words, I'm saying Trump.
Both. Trump wins. Oh my God, that's even worse, Dave.
Now, I'm glad that you kind of misunderstood, because you misunderstood most things. But that was good, because you pointed out my point. If the Democrats have control of the Senate and the House, Trump's powers are extremely limited. Brian, let's face it. Today alone, or within the past 48 hours, 24, he's committed 2 impeachable offenses. One, he lied to the American people
about the pandemic. You're obviously alluding to the Woodward book and tape.
What I find just as disturbing is the whistleblower who came forward today and said that his bosses in Homeland Security ordered that reports be tailored to what Trump was saying, right? Now, the question becomes, I know we'll probably end up talking tonight at some point about Rachel Maddow's interview with Michael Cohen.
Right.
Michael Cohen's in the news. And the one thing that I think Michael Cohen, and I have mixed feelings about Michael Cohen, obviously, but I think the one thing he said that makes sense to me, he said, the sparrow, he didn't say these words, but the sparrow doesn't fall, but the Donald Trump knows about it in the organization. So basically, I feel very, very, very safe in saying nothing has happened that Donald Trump either didn't know about,
right,
or wouldn't have approved if he did, right? You may have...
even if he, as Michael Cohen said, even if he didn't even understand what he was dealing with, he still was the one who made the decisions.
What kind of, not even fucking pardon my English, what kind of fuckwad as a human being, and then find himself president, would say, I know more than the generals, I know more than the scientists. What he knows more of is nothing, okay? The man is ignorant in so many ways and devoid of anything that makes a person human. So he has no emotional intelligence whatsoever. His EQ is 0 or minus, and his IQ, if that were truly a test of intelligence, I don't think it is, but if it was, it would be very, very low. So, okay, let's look at that. We got Trump losing. That's a good thing, right?
Correct.
We have Trump winning, but the Democrats controlling the Senate
and the Congress.
And he will be impeached. He will be impeached.
Yes.
So that's getting rid of him that way. The scary scenario is, of course, Trump wins the Republican Senate. Trump will view a win as an endorsement. And yeah, now,
Could you see an entire party cheat, Dave?
well,
Because you bring up a compelling point.
I know I don't want to hedge here, but I really wish we had terms other than Democrat and Republican, because obviously I think the Republicans are more of one thought, but the Democrats are all disunited and all over the place. But yeah, can I see a party cheating? Yeah, of course I can. And here's why: the Republican Party. Why it's them. Demographically, they are dead. 15 years into the future, 10 to 15 years, they cannot have enough votes except to win in some white state, right? They can't win nationally, given the way people traditionally vote.
Correct.
Now. So they want to hold on to power as long as they can. And the only way they can do it, and they have a proven track record in Florida. Look at what was it? 200 and I don't even know the number. 230,000 votes in Georgia. Think about the corruption of that. The guy is in charge of the state. He runs for approving who's on the voting rolls or not. Runs for governor. Takes 230,000 people off, apparently erroneously. I'm guaranteed they would have been Stacey Abrams voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they know, of course they could. Now the question becomes, though, we're aware of that. And so woe is us. I mean, when I say woe is us, I'm talking about the powers in the Democratic Party that we support. You have to get the best attorneys, you have to be there. And all this, of course, is, what should I say, surrounded, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, by this pandemic. Which I want to ask you a question, Brian, and anybody else tonight, chime in too. Again, I say D.C. because it's 3 metro stops, but my state is Virginia, Crystal City, Virginia, and we have we have a number of ways to vote. I'm very impressed with the way we have it. Our voting here begins September 18th. That's the first day we can cast a ballot. Now I've made my decision. I'm casting it on September 18th at the Clarendon Courthouse. Unless I get over there and see that there's 75,000 people in line, I feel relatively assured that it'll be distance, masks, it'll be fine. My wife, Judy, a little bit more cautious than I am. She's going to vote 1 month later. They've added extra voting places. One is our senior center, which we can walk to. She prefers to do that, although she is going to go with me. And she said if she sees there's a way to vote the first day, she will do it. You've got write-in if you don't want to go out. And then you've got day of voting, right? So, Brian, how do you plan to vote? Have you given it thought yet? I don't know. I used to know New Jersey's. I live there, but I don't now. How are you planning to vote?
I knew you were going to ask that question.
I think we all need to answer that for people because it's not any one better than the other.
So I was in the car talking with Ronnie about that very situation 2 or 3 days ago. And she said to me, I don't know if I can trust Trump with the mail, this DeJoy. Maybe we better go in person and vote. And of course, I was thinking that too. I don't know which is best. I would prefer, because of the pandemic, to vote by mail, obviously, Dave. It's simpler. In any normal type of government, there'd be no problem. There wouldn't be any legal challenges to what I was doing. But again, and this relates right back to what I was saying about our group, the tension, almost the paranoia, ringing in my head. This person who prides on being logical and rational about things, I keep thinking and seeing how somebody will just take my mail and throw it around. In fact, it's almost as if I think that the Republicans are going to put it out there that something like that might happen just so people like me don't do it. Really don't know.
Can I interrupt you there just
Sure.
That made such an important point. and you so rarely do that. Whatever.
You're so complimentary tonight, Dave. This is my big night.
Look, what am I going to say? I'm a man of truth. You suck. What else am I going to say? No, Brian. If I heard you correctly, I don't really listen that much when you talk, but I think what you said is this: basically, you just don't trust, the mail. And then you said, well, maybe they're trying to make me think that way. Do you remember when you said that?
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what they're doing. Okay? Look.
This is directed at the Democrats.
Absolutely.
The paranoia.
Absolutely. Now, there's been a couple Republican senators, as I understand it, who've gone to Trump and say, shut up. Our people are going to vote by mail, too. What the hell are you doing?
Right.
Now, that's privately, right? So they're not real happy with it. But the idea of it is, I think, you've seen the memes, if I have to put on, what is it said, if I have to, with my dying breath, I'll cast my vote. I don't really want to die. And this it sounds strange, it may be superstitious, I don't know. As I would hope all of you out there listening and anyone who follows the show, you are following your inner caution during this virus, because the Trump virus is bad. It's bad. It's really, really bad. All right. But the COVID-19, of course, is worse. It's a given killer. So having said that, but I really do believe on that day, I'm planning not to vote. But if I had, on that day, because I have the other options. Do you know, Brian, do they have early voting in Jersey?
I believe we can send it in early. I mean,
no. Early in-person voting.
Early in-person, not that I know of, but I don't know. So don't quote me.
I mean, it's interesting. Virginia, which once was a red state, somebody just came up. Take your ballot to the register.
It sounds like Gary. I don't know, but I may be wrong. Maybe it isn't Gary.
Well, you know what, Brian? I mean, I don't even read my own stuff sometimes when I post it, because if I didn't write it. But earlier, I'll refer it somewhere in Divided We Stand Facebook page, and I did post it. It tells the voting in each state, dates, and
it's Gary.
Not where you can vote, but how you can do it. And I think this is, Brian, I think your point is very well taken. I want somebody in authority, me to register my vote and me to see it. And if something happens in the registrar's office of Arlington County, wow, right? I'm not going to do the mail. I mean, I'm not. If I had to, I would. Now, I started to say before, I'm not really doing much until September 18th. It's not forever. And I think then I am going to open up and do a couple more things, because I want to cast this vote. That's how important it is. Meaning, I don't want to get sick. If I can help it, I don't want to die if I can help it. And I think we all need to feel that way. But of course, Brian, as you pointed out so aptly, beginning of the show, this is pressure. Okay, this is pressure. There's no question. Anybody who denies it, man, I wonder about them. I really, we never know ourselves, correct, Brian? I mean, we see ourselves as we see it. Some of us see us as the victim in the movie. Some of us see us as a hero. Some of us just see us as this, that, and the other. But I've always seen myself as someone who doesn't get unnaturally nervous about things.
But you have changed, Dave. I mean, over the last 3 years, just look. I mean, I don't want to act as though I'm looking at your posts and making all these judgments.
Oh, no.
But in a general sense, I've seen over 3 years your change from being fairly reasonable to basically telling these people that they're fucking stupid.
But you're comparing apples and missile silos there, boy. Because what I'm saying is nervous about the results. No, I've come to realize this. I don't care if anybody else, agrees with me or not. This works for me. I find out at this point, and you're right, initially I thought I could reason. That was the way I work. I didn't put, I'm a fairly decent talker. I thought, we can sit down, we can talk about this stuff. And it just became more and more and more apparent that wasn't going to work. Whether it was family, whether it was friends, whether it was Facebook friends, whether it was former colleagues, it didn't matter whom. Former students, it just didn't matter. So I just decided, I dropped that. I tried sarcasm. I tried humor. Nothing was going to move them. So today, Brian, the way I look at it, if I can pretty much verify, or you tell me you're a Donald Trump supporter, you no longer exist in my life. That's it.
Here,
I
here.
don't hate you. You just don't exist.
Right, but that's replicating itself everywhere. I'm sure if you're in the chat rooms or
Oh, I
you're
understand that.
you're
But that's
watching this after the show,
different.
we're all the same schmuck, like Lenny Bruce said. It wouldn't matter where you were in this country, at least in most places. We're all experiencing the same tension between our neighbors and, quite frankly, our families, and
Well, let me
it's
ask you,
pulling.
do
It's
you think
pulling.
this is totally speculative? Do you think that the right wing Trumpites, and I'm not going to refer to them as Republicans or conservatives because I do not believe that they are Republicans or conservatives. They're followers of the cult of Donald Trump at this
I'll
point.
agree with you on that.
Clear. Do you think they lose any sleep over not having us as friends? I don't think they lose a minute's sleep. I think in general, and this is why I say that, in general, of course, you can't stereotype large groups, but in general, the very idea that you're a liberal, a person is a liberal, means they probably care more about people.
I think it's more complex than that, Dave. I know where you're going with this. I think you're right that there's some individuals who say, hey, I'll plant my Trump flag. I don't have to be near these liberals. I don't hang out with them anyway. But there are instances where I think it will matter. For example, businesses. We're going to get to the point, if Trump wins, where people will just boycott being around. Like, for example, if Joe the Trumper down the street, does repair work on lawnmowers, I am not going there.
Well, I agree, Brian.
If Tony
That's what I'm
owns
saying.
this restaurant,
I
I'm
know,
not going there.
go
And
ahead.
I told you this, for male, I know this is going to sound strange,
Right.
but more females are anti-Trump than Trumpers. And I think there are a lot of males, young males, who are Republicans. There aren't a lot of them, but I honestly mean this. It's tougher for them to date because they're
Oh,
going
no,
to
that's absolutely true, Brian.
they're going to get closed off. They're going to see somebody that they are extremely attracted to, and that person's going to say no.
The old Greek myth that made its way into Lysistrata and some other things. Basically, so this goes back. I mean, I think the Greek culture is a little bit older than ours, don't you think, Brian? Probably a little bit.
I'd say so.
Ancient Greek, and the play there, and what they did, the women withheld sex to get the men to come to peace, and that's not putting it on them. I also think, obviously, all right, Trump pretends to be the ultimate macho male, right?
Mm-hmm.
The gayest person that I've ever met has more male attributes than Donald Trump could ever have. Donald Trump is a bully. He's the worst kind of bully because he's a scared, cowardly bully. And I've argued with people. I don't think all bullies are scared and cowardly. I just don't. I think Trump, I'm saying many are, and Trump is in that category. But somehow men think he's manly, whether it's he had sex with these women, right? Whether they think he can do what he wants, who knows? But they do. Women see through that. But secondly, he's more of an enemy. The only person he's really not an enemy to, seriously, is a white Trumpite of any age. Who else is his enemy? I mean, he's a misogynist. You think he treats women well? Well, I certainly believe, Brian, what was it Bob Dylan said? I'm older than that now, or I'm younger than that now. The idea was, I thought when he said grab him by the pussy, I said, he's done. Well, he wasn't.
You did say that. I remember
I did say
that.
I said, guys, I'll be honest with you. I was wrong 11 goddamn times. He said 11 different things from the day he slithered down that gold staircase in his cheap-ass Trump place up in New York till the day that he won. I just said he can't go on. He can't do it. But he did.
Dave, in athletics and sports, there'll come a time when there'll be an athlete like a Wayne Gretzky or a Michael Jordan who changes the face of the sport maybe in a better way. But what worries me is that somebody like Trump forever changes politics in America and social discourse in a thoroughly opposite direction that I just spoke about.
And of course, that is a possibility, right? I've been one on the train of Trump is not Hitler, but he's he's certainly getting to the station and ready to get on that train, right? I mean, everything's there. So of course we'd have to worry about that. It's very unsettling that somewhere, and the statistics are pretty much the same, 31 to 40% of the American people on any given day apparently don't understand what America is, because you can't understand what America is and be for Donald Trump. It's an impossibility. It's just impossible.
Well, let me. So you put some pressure on me, Dave, with the voting. You asked me the question, what am I going to do? Because I know that you knew that would be a difficult one for me. And now you're trying to gotcha.
It's not for you, it's for everybody.
But, over the years, I've seen your temperature rise with the Republicans on your page. And this is usually a question that gets directed toward me. What do you think of the people on the left who say, again, we've gone over this before, but what's your emotional feeling about them for those who say Biden is the same thing as a Trump?
They're wrong.
Well, I know we know that. At least you and I know that. But your emotional response.
See, I don't. The difference is, and Brian, you've talked about this. I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong or whatever. Okay, let's say there was a midpoint, right, on the political spectrum, and to the right are conservatives, right, and to the left are liberals, and the Trumpites are all the way down at the right side of the line, and anarchists would have to be on the. But really, anarchists aren't rightists or leftists. They just want to slash and burn.
Correct. They don't offer a solution. They just say, we don't like what's going on. It's better to have nothing.
Burn. Black Lives Matter. I don't understand how any white person in America cannot understand that blacks have been somewhere between not a citizen, not even a human at all, regarded by Americans, all the way to a second or third class citizen. It's time that we right that wrong. So Black Lives Matter, I don't look at them the way as Trumpites would. I do look at those armed vigilantes running around. I liked what I think you're absolutely right. I think, again, it comes from the heart. I ask people this a lot too, Brian. And I'm kind of dancing around this, but I'll come back to it.
You haven't answered the question, right?
I'll come back to it.
Okay.
But I'm going to say, I'm going to go from the right first. Like, they just think all of this. First of all, know all. Know all. By that, what I mean is not all, anything is all, right? You've always going to have exceptions. Mm-hmm. But on the left, I favor everybody on the left, even the violent left, more than I favor anybody on the violent right. The idea would really to be at that center point. And if you were at that center point, you would accept conservative ideas that were good and accept liberal ideas that were good. We don't play that anymore. It's very much used a sports analogy before. Look, is there really a goddamn difference between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, yeah, if you're in Philadelphia or Dallas, I mean, they just had this ridiculous idea. Okay, I'm an Eagles fan. I'll always be. I was born an Eagles fan. I'll die an Eagles fan. But I understand that we're not always the good guys. We're not always the bad guys. So I think, but if you ask me, if it was down to the fight, would you join the ultimate left, the violent left, or the past the midpoint right?
I get you, but I can throw something back. I know this is the way you've decided to answer the question. You're saying, okay, I don't really want to answer completely, but I'm just going to say that this one is better if I had to choose. And I get that, Dave. You make a good point. But then I could come back and say something like Catch-22 and said the enemy is anybody who gets you killed. If the far left decides, fuck it, I'm not going to vote, I hope Trump wins again, and then global warming kills us, they're no different than and I'm still talking here, they're no different than the corporation that pollutes. They're no different than the person who fucking talks shit about the polluters, and then they're the ones carrying the Wells Fargo credit card. I'm sick of it. Well, and in Catch-22, it was correct. The enemy is anybody who gets you killed, and that's how I answer.
Now I'm going to take your point and twist it a little bit.
Okay.
Nobody wants to die, right? I mean, unless you get to the point of suicide. But there are things
Right.
worth dying for. And I can't see anything on the right worth dying for, and I can't see things on the left worth dying for. I don't want to. And you said it's the same thing. My argument is this: saying that they're the same is, in some ways, Brian, saying that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the same.
No, no. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying the result that occurs from what they do is the same.
How many?
I would never
How
say
many
they're the
leftists?
same.
How many leftists have you seen carrying weapons in the street, looking like GI Joe?
Aside from the occasional person who tries to kill somebody who's like an Oswald, not many.
And so I think, again, it's like talking about a realistic fear. I think a realistic fear is the Trumpites getting armed and coming out. They've already shown that. I think we're all somewhat. What should I say? We're just deluged with so much information.
But Dave, hold on. Let's stay where you are. There, you said you're making the impression that we're talking about. Hey, these folks have the guns, but the people you're talking about, vis-a-vis the Catch-22, don't. But again, I know they don't have the guns, but they're allowing the one with the guns to have more power, and that's what's scary. They're saying
I don't
like
disagree with
they're
you.
like the anarchists. Just I'm going to turn the other way.
Well, you and I have actually been on shows similar to this, where we've argued or what our positions of those people that we're talking about, not
Right.
the right wing, the left wing. And I have to be honest with you. I mean, if how am I going to do this? I hate that. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to break that habit. It's just an old speech pattern. Because if you say I have to be honest, I was dishonest 5 minutes ago. Just some stupid things we say. But here's the thing. It really comes down to, how do you think the country should be? I don't think the country should be conservative. All right? I don't. I don't think conservatism, fiscally maybe a little bit, but they seem to go bond in them. I also don't think, and if you go the other way to the left, if they're an anarchist, though, how are you going to change them? And see, I think that's the thing. I don't see the liberal left. I see you're more as an anarchist than a liberal left. Does that make sense, Brian?
Say that one more time.
What?
One more time.
I see people who choose not to vote, who are fully aware of the system, who say the only way to change the system is to burn it down,
Right.
as not being liberal, but being anarchist. And there is a difference between being liberal and anarchist.
Yes.
So maybe we're talking about a group that doesn't even exist, right? We could be. I mean,
You're talking about the former.
I'm sorry, say again.
You're
Brian?
talking about the former, not the latter, because you say you have these people who are. You're saying they're essentially anarchists because they're letting the crash and
If you're
burn.
going to be identified as someone like you were identifying them on the extreme left, I think they've left the left.
I don't even want to call. Well, you're right. You're saying let's not call them the extreme left. Let's just call them they're outside of the left because they're not even in
really,
the.
they're not with us. They
Right.
are against us.
And the question is why? Why do they see that as a solution? That's my point. I can understand saying Wells Fargo's terrible, but I can't understand why you say, well, I'll just carry the Wells Fargo card and I'll just keep playing the game with them because they'll crash and burn.
And anarchy, burn the government down. That's different, Brian. Yes, I don't like hypocrites on any side. I don't like when I'm hypocritical. I try not to be. That's one of my daily daily ways of living. Try to be non-hypocritical, less hypocritical.
Right.
So I think I just think. Let me see.
Take your time. Just take your
No,
time
I'm
with
just
it.
trying. I mean, I want to be fair. Not I want to be fair to you because of And I just caught myself doing something. So how am I going to put? Okay, I'm doing it this way. I think Trumpites. Are you ready? Violent right Aryan nation. They don't care about trouble. He uses them to get elected, correct?
Yes.
And they use him because he endorses and allows them to run free. So I think they still are attached to the Republican, what should I say, apparatus. Anarchists aren't attached. And if they are true anarchists, they just want to burn this. They have the Fargo card, Brian. They, I mean, that's the whole idea. It's naive. Naive. Is it dangerous? It's very dangerous. Okay. And the question, now you've heard me ask people who are on that side. The question is, okay, I got it. Joe Biden's taking money from rich people. In that sense, I can understand. What's your solution? And that's always what I ask an anarchist. What is the solution? What is your solution? And and I'm not saying, oh, I'm good, but I think you need to pin that down. I've asked, give me your candidate. What would you do? I've never heard anybody give me one.
Well, I think, Dave, and I'm the best person to talk about Jesus or relate to Christian or relate to any religion.
Right.
But in my very, very weak knowledge of Christianity or about Jesus or just the idea of Jesus, I think Jesus is the type of person who would have said, if you're going to tell somebody what's fucking right and what they should do, you better fucking do it first yourself because don't tell me to do something or tell me that this is this and this is that unless you do it, because otherwise you should preach to your toes.
Okay, absolutely correct. Remember, because I sometimes get distracted, I really like the women's comment we had after we finished this little bit. I want to jump to that because I do have some strong thoughts about that. See, the problem with using the Bible or anything as a moral guide is this. I do know quite a bit about the Bible. I mean, I was raised in the Methodist Church. I went religiously, if you will, but questioningly for 18 years. I was because I was at Villanova University. I had to take some very interesting theology classes and etc. And I've done a lot of reading on it. But the idea of it is, in the Bible, there's always other outs. Like you say, Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek." Right? That's one that everybody holds. Right?
They hold that. They hold it to be true. Correct.
He also whipped the shit out of those money lenders outside the temple.
Which, by the way, already creates. We can go in that. I don't want to go in this direction, but this is the problem with religion because it has that.
But the point becomes
duplicitous nature.
That's the danger. There are two dangers with organized religion. The books that you use usually were not written, by one. They were written by groups over a period of time, changing, reflecting historical, etc. And the other thing is that you have to accept authority. I would be feeling rather badly today if my moral mentor were Jerry Falwell. That's the problem. So, Brian, I think, again, we want to jump off of this. I think, and you may be right. I'm not saying I think what you're looking at.
I'm not even asking for perfection. I just want some fucking consistency in people.
You're much more of a perfectionist than I am in human nature, which is interesting. Well, I guess it is in falling.
I'm going to deal with this one too, by the way. Sandy posted. After you finish, I want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, Brian, we'll finish it with this. I said, I think just to end our conversation, and it's good that you and I have these, because I'm always right and you're always wrong, and it's good for people to know that. No, but
you're always funny. And I'm sometimes funny, except you don't know that you're funny.
Your trigger mechanism is mine, but not to the same degree. Yours is hypocrisy.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Jesus also did not like, the historical or the mythical Jesus. And I think what you want is people to be true.
And I think I'd share a grape soda with Jesus and we can get along. So here's some chips and grape soda.
Only if it's knee high. They made the only grape orange and grape knee high. Let's get that women up. Let's get off.
Yeah, I do want to thank you, Dave, for I know we kind of circled around it, but we got to, I think, where we need to get to.
Let me do the women first.
Okay, so you want to read it?
Yes, women make a difference. If you're going to ask me, Jefferson's famous quote I come back to, being a newsman, if it were up to me to have a government without newspapers or newspapers without the government, I should not hesitate a moment to choose the latter. That was bullshit he didn't like, but it sounds good, right? And I will say this. If you told me tomorrow there can be no men in the Senate, no men in the House, and a female president, a female vice president, an entire female cabinet, or they'll all be males, I would go with the women in a moment. And the reason is men, we're trained, we're conditioned to be macho. Women are trained and conditioned to be mothering. Now, I'm not saying that's genetic. I don't want to get a lot of, but basically, women make better decisions. And I think I can prove that. Look at the countries that did the best under COVID. Do you know what they share in common?
It's obvious from what you've just said.
What do you think it is? Look it up. They're led by women. The country who has macho, Trump want to be macho. Yeah, so of course women. I think they're forced to juggle. I laugh. And now I'm not saying that because my wife's a feminist, although she is, and she'll hit me with a frying pan, and she will. But having said that, I admire what women can do so much. They're mothers, they're workers, they have to do it all.
Well, I'm just thinking the lower testosterone levels would help.
There you are. We don't need to go any further. So we can. We kind of leave that. I'd love to argue with somebody why men make better, but I'm not going to argue with anybody who said women make better, because that's what I believe.
So I do want to go over this comment because it's just so easy to say the word the rich, and I think Sandy's bringing up a point, which I think where she's going with this, because I've always liked to bring this up. So Sandy, I hope you're still on the line. You said, is it possible for rich to donate to a candidate without buying influence, just for the goodness of what the policies are? And I think what she's kind of answering her own question, because I think in one sense, I don't want to speak for Sandy, but Sandy is in a milieu, in an environment in which
Sandy has mildew.
Okay, see, Sandy, he's abusive here, but he's joking, of course. But no, Sandy's show is in an environment where you have, obviously climate change, and they're unrelenting because it's the most serious problem affecting the world right now. But it's not made up of people who are politically savvy and understanding the full ramifications of what has to be done to get to A to B to C to D. They want to get from A to Z, and I get that. But you see that there's and I don't even like saying this, but there's a certain animosity toward all the rich, as if rich bad, poor good. And I think what she's kind of leaving it open there for me to say, and I may be wrong, that there are decent rich people, and there have been in the history of time. They've done about faces, or maybe they're the people. Look at Anderson Cooper. He seems like he's the most genuine human being I see on television, and yet he was kind of a mama's boy. And he's just one anecdotal example.
He's a very wealthy family.
Absolutely, Gloria Vanderbilt. But the point is that we have to be very careful to not just place somebody into this group is unethical because they have the money. See, I won't even go that far. What is wrong with somebody's ethical decision making is usually some flaw in logic or some egotistical emotional mechanism within them that makes them want to just service themselves, to be selfish. So I don't want to say specific. Look, the poor are no picnic, Dave. You've had You and I have both had situations with the poor. It's not easy. Okay, it's not easy.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But I certainly, I'm on their team before I'm on the rich team. But
well, I think
that being said, to simply say the rich are doing this, there are a lot of rich people that hate Trump.
And I'm going to take it this way. I think Sandy answered her own question within that. Could you put it up one more time? I want to make
Absolutely.
sure. Absolutely.
I mean, she's. I can sense where she's going with that.
I'm going to take
without saying it.
Okay. Is it possible for rich people to donate to a candidate without buying influence? Yes. But two people, remember, are involved in that: the seller and the buyer. So, are there people who give money to candidates quid pro quid? Absolutely. Are there candidates who give money because they believe in the causes that the candidate supports? Absolutely. If they give an extraordinary amount, and you brought this up, Brian, it'd be nice if we only had one problem facing us. I mean, let's just think. Nuclear war, always there with us. Environment, can die from that. Pandemic, violence in this. I mean, the list just goes on. Racism, if I were black, that would be the number one problem in my life. If I were, an immigrant or trying to come in, xenophobia might be it. If I'm a woman, gender inequality might be it. So how does that relate to money? Well, sometimes, you give the money, and if you give a lot of money, say, yeah, I know you got to work on all these, but work on mine. But she also had one more time. Yeah, Keith, I'm with you on that. But so many Americans and so many people around the world use it. I use it as a basis and then debunk it. Brian, the quote from Sandy one last time, please. So I want to answer, deal with the second part. Could you put that up?
About the rich?
Yeah, last one. Just for the goodness of what the policies are. And Sandy builds in her own answer there. Again.
Yeah, I don't think she would have added that if she wasn't thinking that.
Well, no, she didn't. That's what I'm saying. That's the answer. Mm-hmm. The rich aren't good or bad just by being rich. The rich are good or bad by what they do with their riches. Okay? A candidate who accepts money is not good or bad simply because he accepts money. Unfortunately, it is obscene. I don't care whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, QAnon, which now is part of the Republican Party. The amount of money that it takes to get elected, and how much did Hillary Clinton spend to lose? I mean, let's be brutally honest. How much money did she spend to lose? A hell of a lot of money, right? So that money's not evil in and of itself. And what is rich? Of course, what is rich? I can answer that if you'd like. I did some research on that. The wealthy say that in order to be considered rich on up the scale, you must have in your disposable hands $7.1 million in assets that you can liquidate and use tomorrow. That's their figure. They did a survey. I mean, that's just interesting. Well, when you start getting up in the billions, the billionaires, I don't know. So yeah, again, just for Keith, a shout out here, note, hey, Australia, but also the Bible. I don't believe in it as the word of God, but so many people use it. It says, what's the quote there about the rich? It is Jesus supposedly said, it is easier to fit through for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. And I think a lot of people are influenced by the Bible that way. I think Jesus, if he were around today, I would hope he would then a corrupt rich man. See, again, you got to have adjectives. DeJoy did buy his position, no question, and DeJoy will go down. And I think the greatest thing about that is look how close or how quickly Trump distanced himself, and he said, "Oh yeah, we'll have an investigation." Well, first of all, he knows it's not going to happen, before the election. Secondly, Trump would sell anybody, and I know he would sell Ivanka. He would sell Ivanka. I believe that, to save himself. And as I said, it was interesting. Michael and I were having this discussion tonight, our son, and as I said, and it's really interesting to watch him blend the Australian views in with the American views, because and he has a much more, because he travels all over the world. And he was saying, and I think he might be onto something. We've been trying to struggle why the Republican Party, and by that I mean the top wigs, Cruz, McConnell, people that Trump has attacked, why they defend it. And I think they're concerned about their own lives. I think they know that if Trump really goes down, he's going to pull everybody down with him, right? And that's just not metaphorical. I mean, that's real. He'll sell anybody out.
And they'll deserve it, Dave. Every one of them will deserve
Every
it.
one of them will deserve it. I'm just saying that speaks again of wealth and power. And will you sell your soul? That's what it's really about. That's not biblical or religious or anything. It's what will you do? What lines will you cross that realistically should not be crossed? Trump doesn't have any lines. Okay. I don't believe there's a thing he wouldn't. If he thought, I don't think he was kidding when he said I could murder somebody in Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose, or in Times Square, and I wouldn't lose any votes. I think he really believes that because he's so delusional and so narcissistic.
Well,
So,
there are people. Look, for example, if these people are willing to break laws, Dave, for this man,
well,
or think it's okay to break laws, well, why wouldn't they? They look. There are Republicans right now who would say, if I could throw David Price and Brian Weinstein in the Atlantic Ocean, I don't know them, I'd be glad that it happened. There are people, that right wing, watching this who would say, to hell with those two guys.
The saddest people are those who aren't in power, who have bought into Trump. They're the saddest. I don't feel empathy or sympathy for them.
They're the most dangerous.
190,000 people. I don't want to be insensitive to those families, but I do want to attack Trump this way. He said on the tapes with Woodward, he said, I didn't want to cause a panic. How's that working out for those 190,000? You think they're panicked tonight, Brian?
Right.
No.
Can you, Dave, I didn't actually hear the tape. What did he say?
What?
Is that basically what he said? I didn't want them to panic.
Yeah,
Did you hear?
Basically, what he's doing now is, I mean, I never know what Trump believes and what he doesn't believe. I know that I don't believe him. But the other thing is, I think, which was interesting about that, he was trying to avoid panic. You know what panic he was trying to avoid? A stock market panic. That's all he was trying to avoid. And unfortunately, people that fall. If I hear one more goddamn person I know tell me, look at your stocks, I think I'm going to go crazy, because that's not what it's about. Look at the homeless that are living right outside my window, literally right outside our apartment, and then got moved by the police the other night. Look at the businesses. I talk to them every day. Look at the kids who aren't getting an education, the teachers that are scared. I mean, no. And there is, again, when we started this show, Brian, about divided we stand, you and I talked about it a lot even before we started the show. There are, I believe, and I think it bears repeating here, there's one reality, but we see it many different ways, right? Many people see it different ways. But the real reality of the economy right now is not the stock market. The real thing is the businesses closing, the people who can't pay their rent, the costs in Sturgis, 250,000 ignorant pigs wanted to ride their Harleys, which I guess they get their jollies from doing. And now they're talking about, I've been traced to 250,000, like that's 1-to-1 cases. That's bad enough, but $12 billion in cost. And maybe the loss of another doctor, another couple nurses,
Dave, actually, this is kind of one of those ironic, hypocritical moments. One of your favorite movies, what the hell was it? With Born to Be Wild, Easy Rider.
Easy Rider, right.
So you yourself said after watching that, you just wanted to go out and find some hillbillies.
First time in 1969, if I'd seen anybody who looked like they were from Alabama or Mississippi, and I were the least bit violent, and that was as violent as I could get, yeah, I would have gunned him down.
But here's the interesting thing.
Right.
The bikers in South Dakota switch roles. Now they're like the conservative guys who are sitting at the breakfast table or the dinner table, or whatever, the booth. They completely switched roles.
Well, you know what, and I'm gonna trip you up on that one too, because as I revisited Easy Rider over the years, the key scene is not the end. That's where you go emotionally.
Right.
The most important scene is the very first scene. I don't know if you remember it or not.
The drugs?
Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda are and you hear this airplane go over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you sit there for it, and actually it's Phil Spector, believe it or not, playing a role, and he comes up and he gives them a bunch of money, and you see it. Peter Fonda, Captain America, puts it in his in a
Gas tank, right, or something like that.
Tube that's actually in his gas tank.
Right.
So what got them started? And you read later, and I read about it, they did a huge drug deal, and not marijuana, and that's how they got their money to finance their trip.
Right.
So they were already compromised, if you will, doing that. But because it was made to appeal to the young at that time, and an appeal to freedom, and hate the rednecks. Now that doesn't make anybody right or wrong. I always thought the coolest character, well, Peter Fonda, if you like that kind of cool, which I did, but really was Jack Nicholson, of course, because he in the South realized, he was kind of like the Atticus Finch character.
Right.
It's one thing to be very liberal and up in the North if you want, but man, try being liberal in the South in those days.
Well, that one line was it. That was the whole movie. He said, we just won freedom. What would they have against that? He says, yeah, it's a great word, but the minute you try to get it from, forget it.
They'll kill you for.
They'll kill you for it.
To bring, kind of bring us around to this. I've been thinking a lot about freedom recently, because there's multiple freedoms. But here's something that's never changed, Brian. When you talk about rights, yeah, you have a right to do what you want, but that's always the rights of the individual is always going to be in conflict with the rights of the group whenever they're not adjoined, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a right not to wear a mask? Individually, I guess, but collectively you don't.
You don't. Before you go to this
we got a
point,
mic right. And I've been with
Dave, because I know you're the only one who can answer this.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I don't know. Sandy did ask, why did Woodward wait? You have probably some type of explanation.
Yeah, I do, and I'm not sure. And Sandy, that is I don't want to do the kumbaya singing here. That is exactly, again, what Michael and I were talking about tonight when we had our political conversation. First of all, Woodward is very thorough. Okay, Woodward is the plotter of the Bernstein-Woodward team. Again, Bob Woodward and I are not best friends, but because I live in Washington, because I worked at the museum, I had a chance to talk to him on 4 or 5 occasions. And, I asked him questions that I wanted to ask or hear him answer questions that others asked. And he's still the plotter. Somehow, people believe that they should talk to him. If you've done anything wrong, you should talk to Bob Woodward because he'll get you. I mean, he's like Mike Wallace was on 60 Minutes. If I saw Mike Wallace coming, and I'd run, and people would say, oh, I know, they talk to him and everything. So I think at that point, Trump, being Trump, maybe he worshipped, think about it, Brian, because I know I'm going backwards here, but the first question is, why would Trump talk to him at all?
Would it probably have nothing to do with the contract they had with the interview or whatever, the agreement?
No. Because Woodward doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Woodward
is just asking the question because I'm a neophyte.
No, it's not, because you don't know. Woodward is more powerful than the Washington Post.
Really?
And he still works for them. Woodward, and because Woodward stayed in and Bernstein went out, and he was a free spirit and the hippie and that kind of thing more than Woodward was. Woodward is actually always lean conservative. He was Republican the people don't realize that.
Right, because they were different, right?
He was a Republican at the time that he was working, and that was what was so ironic. And Libya, oh no, not Bernstein. He was very much left. Came from a communist leaning family, but. What I want to find out is the timing. I think it might have to do with this. I think it's a combination of both. First of all, Woodward, as I say, is meticulous. It's not easy to get a book out. It's really not, when you have to fact check. Interesting enough, shout out to anybody who lives where we do, Brian. Are you ready for this? His senior fact checker is from Vineland and went to Vineland High School.
Wowzers.
Yeah. And again, she can't reveal certain things, but I've had dinner with her a couple of times and tried to pump her for her thoughts. But anyway, but I think the timing is this. Woodward is very smart. And of course the book. The reason it came out now, there's no way that Trump can duck it. You know what I mean? There's just not enough time. This is going to stand as the record going into the election, what was in Woodward's book. And you either believe it or you won't. I mean, which has kind of been true of Trump all along. But I'm surprised. I think a number of people, like even I had to holler at Michael a little bit tonight and said, well, they're going to believe Bob Woodward. I said, no, they won't, if they don't believe Trump. But I do think Woodward is the closest thing, I guess, Brian, the way I'm trying to say is Woodward probably in the American psyche today is the closest thing we have to Walter Cronkite. He's not Walter Cronkite. Nobody will ever be Walter Cronkite, and nobody will ever live in the times that Walter Cronkite lived.
Perhaps he also, this is possible where he waited because maybe there's something else he could make another mistake and then hold him accountable.
I'm sorry.
For example, could there be something within his interview that over time Trump will trip again and it'll be a continuous
It doesn't.
event?
Here's the thing, Brian. This is what amazes me. Look. All right. Let's go back to a time I'm 16 years old. 15. I was precocious now. So I'm 15 years old, and I got a girlfriend, right? And I'm kind of seriously in love with this girlfriend, I think, if you know what love is. And I find out she cheated on me, right? But she says, no, I didn't cheat on. I didn't do that. Okay. Then so because she was with Joe. Well, no, she said she wasn't. Well, okay. Well, this is Donald Trump with his lies, right? I mean, I could see my girlfriend and she's, oh, no, this isn't what it looks like, right? So Donald Trump is just compulsive doesn't even cover it. Possibly the stupidest lie, obviously the stupidest lies that he's made is when we know he said something and he denies saying it. And we've heard it, right? That's been a number of tapes.
Stormy Daniels, and that's an classic example.
I mean, a lot of them. But I think actually the dumbest remark to me, and some people believed it or dismissed it, was when he said, oh, I was so upset. Well, he didn't say it. He got others to say it. But I was so upset about not attending the services, in France for the soldiers. And I called Melania back at the White House to tell her, hey, simple fuck, Melania was standing by your side. You didn't call jack shit. Right. She was right there. Clear line. Now, what we find interesting, what he was doing while he claimed to be so upset. Do you know what he was doing, Brian?
Well, it's the only thing he really likes doing is playing golf.
Nope. He was stealing artwork from the home that he was staying in. True story. Now, the irony of that is the artwork that he thought he was getting value for was fake itself. So a fake president was stealing fake artwork, but it doesn't matter because a president shouldn't steal artwork to begin with.
Right. Then
lying about calling his wife. And anybody who believes all that, what are they? They're Jim Jones cultists.
Right.
Now, we're going to circle all the way back to the beginning of the show. Are there enough Jim Jones cultists to vote Trump in the office? And the answer is absolutely not. No. Because there are many voters who voted for Trump in 2016 who will not vote for Trump this time. And many of them have already gone on record as voting for Biden. Right? Will vote for Biden. Trump has not picked up not one person, unless there was somebody in a family, of gun nuts, like the young man who decided he would defend the stores and kill 2 unarmed people. And now that came out today. I don't know if you saw the results today. He claimed he was assault. He killed the one person firing twice. The first 2 shots, he shot him in the back. So I don't think he was defending himself. I really don't. I don't know, Brian. Do you ever do that? I know when I was in a few fights when I was young. I don't say that proudly. I lost most of them, but I don't ever remember going to fight someone walking backwards up to them. Do you? No. I mean, come on, So yeah, if he had been eligible to vote, that kid might have voted for him, because he didn't the first time. So no. So, but are there Republicans in positions of power that will help Trump try to steal the vote? Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, speaking of Republicans, Dave.
So that's the difference. Are there enough bad people in positions of power nationally? Because Mitch McConnell's not going to go and steal any votes. It's going to be the Kentucky Republicans that are going to do it. Are there enough to cost the election? We'll know.
No.
We'll know.
Listen, I did want to go back to something I said I was going to talk about actually at the top of the show, but I didn't bring it up. But you and I very, very briefly discussed this. Michael Cohen was on Rachel Maddow's show, and as you know, on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow is probably the most thorough in terms of digging information, probably having a large staff. Each one's a bit different from the other. She's kind of hard to watch at times.
I just want to make sure. Not the large staff that Donald Trump claims he has, right? Not that
right.
Kind of
no.
Okay. So make sure.
So I wanted to make this comment because I know a lot of people don't like Rachel Maddow, whether they are on the anarchist left or whatever you want to call it. The right hate her. I don't think I've seen anybody more prepared than Rachel Maddow in terms of how she prepares and how thoroughly knowledgeable she is about a situation. And that has to do with Trump and Russia and whatever. So she had this, what I would consider a very compelling interview with Michael Cohen, because it seemed as though everything she said was corroborated by what Michael Cohen said. And you can say what you want, and we can argue about this. Look, Michael Cohen is a liar in the past. He's a rake. He's everything that you don't want to be when we talk about a man of good character. He's not. But from what he said, he says, "Look, I'm a broken man," and I will say, in terms of determinism, you can only change when you have the arrows, and I think Michael Cohen said something important. He says, I'm literally broke, and I've been broken. Now, we know he's going to make money on his book. He's had, obviously, problems with his wife, his family. And, when you have a 16-year-old daughter, they don't think the same way that people on Wall Street think. He's got to answer to her. And that's like answering to a dog when you know you've been mean or you've done something wrong you shouldn't have done. So I get what he said. I'm broken and I'm broke. I have no reason to lie now. And I think there are these, I don't want to say an epiphany, but there's a point when it gets so simple where you say to yourself, I don't like myself and I don't want to die this way. And I get that feeling from Michael Cohen. I'm not making him a saint. What I am is I'm saying he decided to be human for once. Just like my grandmother was a very crazy religious person. And the only time I saw her act human in terms of breaking down is when she said, I can't put the dog down myself. I had to have the neighbor do it because it hurt too much. And that was the most human thing she ever said to me. And I loved my grandmother, but she could not be human in certain cases. She had to be superhuman. And I think this is a particular case where Michael Cohen finally got disgusted at himself. And he says, either I'm going to die with some type of dignity or not. And to get that, or whatever he's looking for, maybe for his daughter or for whomever, for his wife, this is what he had to do. Because Donald Trump was, as the title of his book, Disloyal, was disloyal. All those things he did for Trump, and Trump put a machete in his back. Comment, Dave.
Yeah. Okay. Rachel Maddow is brilliant. There's
Thank
no
you.
question about that. Okay. Rachel Maddow but she is a star. Okay, but she's a good star.
Good star.
A good star, but
like you're saying, good trouble. She's good trouble.
Maybe for some people, but also what I'm saying is we never know. We know that she's very good when she gets on air, and that's not easy to do.
And she suffers from depression too.
That is also correct. The thing that we don't know is how much of her preparation is done by her staff.
Okay, give you that.
Now it doesn't really matter. Because we just have to realize that it might not all be, it doesn't matter, because when it comes down to it,
somebody knows their shit. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, but she's able to learn it. You
Right.
could tell Trump how to spell cat, and he'd still spell it with a
Right.
friggin'
He still screw it up.
I mean, you know, so that I mean that is brilliant. And I make that same comparison to people that I really like Stephen Colbert. My God, even when it was, I mean, um, you know, even when he was on the Daily Show as a just you know the first correspondent, and I'm thinking this guy just has it.
Right.
And he
He's
does
more
it.
dangerous than many, people
Now
on
you know,
ABC or
almost
NBC
at
News.
the end, right? You know, just before the end, it was almost you were kind of like it was kind of like sports. You could be a Stewart fan or a Colbert fan, right? When they had the competing shows at the end, they were friends each other, and
Right.
also Bill Riley was in that group, believe it or not, Papa Bear. But I was always Team Colbert. But as he's pointed out, he also is Team Colbert, meaning literally, he works, you know, with a staff that is brilliant. It's like the comic, okay? Lenny Bruce, you know, you and I talk about Lenny a lot.
We're both fans of Lenny Bruce.
I admire the shit out of that man. He rarely worked on his own. I mean, literally. I mean, he didn't have writers. Bob Hope, there are people like Bob Hope. I'm not one of them. I mean, I just never found his comedy that funny. But he was all a credit to his writers. In fact, it's interesting. At the Library of Congress, Bob Hope turned over his entire joke collection to them. And you go through it, and I've gone through it. It's really interesting. Who wrote what, you know? But, I mean, he was a great, you know, so there's entertainers. Some people are funny. I think, you know, the comic right now who's just doing satire the best, and you like him too, is Brett Terhune. I don't
Yes.
think there's anybody out there doing it better than he's doing it. But yet I've watched his comic commentary. I didn't think he was that funny.
Well,
You know what I mean?
he's
found his
figured
niche.
it
That's
out.
what I'm saying. Sometimes you find that. Now, Michael Cohen is what should I say? Yes, I'm glad, and I hope he has. Look, you know, you were talking about kind of redemption, and as a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, which I am, one of the things that you first have to admit to yourself that there's a problem, right? So sometimes it doesn't matter whether that confrontation comes from the police or from your wife or from yourself. You also mentioned something that I think a lot of people who get into recovery and stay in recovery, they don't want to be who they are, and they realize the only chance is to stop using the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it is you're using. And he may have reached that point. But there's also a thing in there, in the 12-step program, that says, wherever possible, to make amends for those you've hurt. And Michael Cohen has hurt a hell of a lot of people.
Yes.
Now, I found it interesting last night.
He made a lot of threats to people that
Exactly.
no
That's what
human
I'm
being
saying.
should make.
So how do you make amends for that?
Right.
I don't know. You know, so I'm not leery of what he says. I think he's telling the truth. I really do. I am leery of his life with Trump. How does someone get to that point?
Right.
To me, Trump's just so obvious. Trump is not a man that you want to be associated with, because he's not only going to not have your back, he will supply the knives, and if necessary, he will stick the knife in himself. So you sell your soul. I mean, whatever that is, right? So they're my concerns about Michael Cohen. I wish him, if he's legitimate, I wish him well. But you know what I do hope? I hope he sometimes, I don't know if you know this, Brian, because you know you're not an alcoholic and drug addict. Most recovering people, no matter how many years you have in the program, they have what they call drunk dreams or drug dreams, depending. And you realize that you're doing, but you know it's a dream. It's just weird. I hope he has not nightmares necessarily, but I hope as his conscience mends that he realizes and tries to reach out maybe to some of these.
Right. And I agree with you.
So I mean,
and without telling anybody, he should do it.
Now, the other thing that I do want to take you to task for, the only thing I'll take you to task for is you're kind of amazed that, well, first of all, I guarantee you Rachel had read that book cover to cover.
Yes. Yes.
So she knew.
She knew ahead of time what he was going to say.
You know, and I'm not saying
As she should have.
prepared.
As she should
be
have.
prepared. And she wasn't. That was a tough job. How do you speak to this demon, which he was in his previous life, yet you believe him now, you know, without being too, I thought she balanced a good line there, but I didn't share. I mean, when we talked earlier, I didn't hear so much on the show. We talked, I was like, oh my God, how she kind of in your voice. I don't know if maybe I'm misreading it, but kind of, wow, it wasn't something because A, like I said, she is good. B, she has a great staff. C, she read it. And the other thing, Brian, and I know this because I've been on a few of the shows like that. Trust me, they have long, long talks before they go on. They don't do what we do.
I agree.
They don't have a 2-minute phone conversation because you can't find your underwear and we're late and we can't go on. And then suddenly they go on. So, I mean, it's still a talent. It's still, I mean, I'm not Rachel Maddow. I couldn't do what she does, but I can find my underwear, which, ladies and gentlemen, is the true story. We didn't go on last night because Brian had forgotten to wash. He only has 4 pair of underwear.
Had nothing to do with the fact that I still hadn't completed all my lessons for my kids the last 2 days.
Yeah, okay, Donald Trump. Give us your excuses. You know, you want to be a hypocrite there. You're playing the Donald Trump role. Pretty damn. Yeah. I want to pick up on one thing that I said before. I'm going to be really interested to see how, you know, they talk about the October surprise. You know, that's always been. What could surprise us?
Right. What else can you do?
I mean,
to just shock us?
And we don't have an election, or I mean, what could you do? And think about this. I mean, it's almost as if the cosmos are laughing at us. There is and I haven't heard much about it. It's not going to kill us, but there is going to be supposedly an asteroid, right, coming at us and hit us the day before election day. Now it's smaller than the refrigerator, so it can't do a lot of damage and should burn up. You shouldn't get it. But isn't that, Sandy? I love you. I'm not crazy about Brian. You have some more great shows. Someday I'll go work with you again.
I've never been so insulted in my life.
What? Did I like Sandy better? She's a better host. She's hosted shows I've been on. You're a terrible host. You cut me off. You did now. The idea of it is, you know, when as I say, this idea of what could Trump do? There's nothing left.
Yeah, what else can he do?
I mean,
but he does surprise. Look, Dave, you have to admit he does surprise you sometimes. Like,
well, that's what I'm
you say.
saying.
You can't get any worse, and he does it.
I mean, seriously, you know what? And again, I'm not one of those. Oh, my desk has just made a friggin' plant. No, I wasn't even knocking on wood. My big fear, you know what, Brian, hasn't been realized, but so I'm going to say, you know what I really was most concerned about? I thought he would get us in a nuclear war. I really did when he first came in. And of course he hasn't, because he's in love with all the nuclear power dictators. Brian probably just wrote that, or Sandy wrote
yeah. Thank you, Sandy.
The hell with you, Sandy. I used to like you. Stay on Brian's side.
Dave's been like this for the entire time I've known him, for 20 whatever years.
It's been a long time.
Now, we're good friends, though. Believe me. We just joke around.
No, you think that? I don't. No. The idea of what could Trump, I mean, like I said, I don't know what he could do, except that. Would he be delusional enough? Oh, gee, Brian, sorry,
I can't help it. It's not you. I'm tired.
That's one of those fake.
See, he gets insulted if I yawn.
Today, you're tired. Ask him today if he went to school. Did you go to school today, Brian?
It was cleanup day.
Physically to school.
Physically, I didn't go to school, but I did the school from work from home.
No, moving right along. Would Donald Trump, in his delusional thinking, think that if we're at war, the people wouldn't desert their? I mean, that's kind of been the way, right? So would he? But I don't think there's enough time to do that. So, like I said, I think the surprises that are come out.
I get what you're saying there.
What?
And you're probably going to not like where I go with this, because this is my area here. You know, the area that I talk about over there in Moscow, that's what worries me.
No, it should.
Because this election means more to Putin than it does to Trump.
No. Okay. I don't. You want to. The other.
Well, it does mean. No, I'll take that back. That was too quick. This means a lot to Trump.
I think it served. I mean, explain it more. But I think I understand, and I think you're
There's
right.
a lot of gravity to this election in Russia, because he has gained so much power in the 4 years that Trump has been president. There was always a check and a balance with the United States, and he wasn't getting what he wanted when Obama was president. And he's gotten everything, and he's put the lid on it. And in fact, look at what's happening in Belarus. They've put the lid on everything. And it's to his advantage to do everything to get him elected again. Because Trump could literally destroy this country.
Absolutely. Couple things
Wouldn't
to think
need
about.
the Russians to do it.
Take this in two areas. First way is, what could he do? Okay, is he going Putin? And by Putin, you really can say he, even though he doesn't do the actions, right? He is Russia right now. Will he try to influence the American election? Exactly. Of course he will. Now, how can he do that? Uh, he does it a lot with the misinformation, with the false information. The serious question is, can they get in and actually change votes? Or could they get in the grid that day?
Or could they get people on the right to do something? Get them angry, get them scared.
Well, but again, that's what's so interesting.
Or get us not to vote by mail or whatever, or to vote by mail.
You remember the movie The Manchurian Candidate?
Yes.
They don't have a Manchurian Candidate, all right? So anything they do, I mean, I don't think they have a lot of spies that are running around in, like the old KGB guys that are really affiliated with the KKK, or if they're there, they're in government. Right?
It's a more sophisticated operation now.
Yeah, and so,
which is what Peter Strzok was talking about, alluding to.
Now here's was with a couple of people, socially distanced, everybody, masks on. We went out to have a talk outside. And they're in some politics here, not high level, but and we're just kind of pretending, playing some games. And I said, okay, I'm going to give you my conspiracy theory. It'd be a great novel. Any writers out there? I don't write novels, but I really think this would be pretty cool. Putin doesn't want Trump to win. He wants him to be really close, and then let America destruct internally.
I think that's thinking very far.
Trump is so dumb in terms of, or so in love with, it's not a sexual love. It's a power love. He realizes Putin's more powerful than him, and that's why he wants to be him. He realizes the little Korean guy, Rocket Man, is more powerful than him, and he wants to be them. He's closer to the size of Rocket Man. Putin's looks pretty damn healthy. None like Trump and Kim Jong-un there. But what about that? I mean, I'm just making that up, but that'd be a great, in other words, he's telling Trump to do the wrong things, right? Trump doesn't understand that. To make sure that he doesn't win, but keep it close, and then we implode from within.
Which we're doing right now. I mean, how much worse could Putin do? Brian,
we got to be careful about that, okay? Now, I'm going to not play devil's advocate, but I am going to say something. Certainly we are divided. No question about that. And the divide may be, I think it's...
You are divided, I'm divided, the country's divided.
Everything's divided, I got that. But when you talk about the violence right now, first of all, if the statistics are correct, what was it? 93% of all protests in this era,
nonviolent.
This current era, have been nonviolent. Well, you say, well, what? I'm not you can't blame the news for this. The news is not that 35 people went to the courthouse in Bridgeton, New Jersey, right, and staged a nonviolent protest about anything.
Okay,
So we get inundated with that. That's first of all, right?
I've got to stop you there for a second, though, because there is the idea, and there have been people who have said this. Steven Pinker's one who said that human beings were much more violent back then, but that's perhaps not the case, because all you need is one or two nuclear weapons to go off, and in one shot. So it's the potential here, even though there's 93% nonviolence.
We're talking about violence in America between them and us.
Right now you're correct. But that can change quickly.
It could change. I don't disagree. I'm saying today. I have to deal with today. That's all I know. So you have that. But the fear, Trump is trying, and it's an interesting strategy. Fear got him elected the first time, and he thinks since he hasn't done anything, fear will get him elected a second time. But here's the fallacy with that. Even divorce the fact that people are realizing Trump is somewhere between evil and a buffoon. To my knowledge, and please anybody out there can correct me, there's never been an insider win on we need more law and order. It's always been the outsider. Richard Nixon, outsider. Everybody, nobody says. I mean, when he says law and order, law and order is gone. Well, he's the president. It's his fault, right? I mean, any rational person sees that. And they. I mean, look, they can overlook it, but they know that. What they know is they being his supporters, they hate certain groups. Donald Trump appears to hate those same groups. And I find this fascinating. You want to go with hypocrisy? One of your favorite themes? Okay. So Trumpites won't wear masks because you don't have the right to tell me what to do, but they support abortion down the line.
Right.
So we can tell women what they can do, but
right.
You can't tell. I mean, come on, get real.
Right, but that's look. You and I both say the same thing, Dave. Come on, get real. But this is a real problem because when they have that intransigence, that means that there really is that division, and there's no way back from that.
I don't think there is, Brian. I'm not. There isn't a way back. What makes you think we're all going to go out there and hug?
No, maybe it's just when it's said like, "Oh my God, look how stupid they are." Well, it's not even the point now, but because we just knew they were dumb and we knew they would be like this. I'm not putting you down, Dave.
The difference is right now they, not us, control the country. They have their president and they have a Senate that protects their president.
Yes.
So we have to make sure that they don't have that.
Yes.
Now, I think a lot of people, I'm concerned about this too. You were talking about can you imagine, let's take it the other way. Your question was very appropriate about to any of us, what will we do if Trump does win again? But I think what if you look the other way? If Biden wins, so many will take just such a sigh of relief. And we can for that night only, right?
Right, because you don't know what's going to happen.
The next day, there's still Republicans.
Right. And they're angry. Now
Trump,
they're
still Trumpites in Congress. There's still the people elected
in our
there's
position.
Still the vigilantes. There's still racism. All those problems are out there.
And they're angry this time, not us. They're the ones that are angry.
Well,
and
I'd rather them be angry than
no. I get that, but I just want to understand. First of all, why they hated Obama, and just the fact that Kamala Harris is the vice president, that's going to get them upset.
Of course. Let's and again, we keep coming back to that. I will
It's
be afraid
all
of them.
about color to them.
I'll tell you when I will be afraid of armed vigilante groups. When they take on the U.S. military or even good National Guard troops and they win, hell, then we're in trouble. Until then, we won't. You can parade around all day with a gun. Now, can we change? We must change.
Do you want to address that one, Dave? I don't feel like doing it right now.
Not black. Yeah, very simply, I'll do that. She is of mixed race, part Indian, some African American, Jamaican, I think. But here's the thing: in America, she's black.
Yeah.
And historically, what was it? If you had 3% or some percent of blood, you were black. So I don't buy that argument from white. I don't buy it from black. She's black simply because Donald Trump thinks she's black. That's all. We can argue it all day, but that's fine.
This is just the way they think. They don't care. They don't look. They don't do it. It's like in Germany, if you were 1/1000th Jewish, you were still going into the ovens.
Yeah, and it's the same thing here. But the idea of this fear. I mean, it's bully fear. Now, did I have a conversation with my wife about maybe we should go get, because she knows how to fire a gun. I do too. Maybe should we go and not buy an AK-47, but since we kind of can fire, I could use 22s and 410 shotguns, but I don't know anything about AK-47 and she just looked at me like, "What are you, crazy?" And I didn't. But I mean, so yeah, we're all thinking that. There's another one. That's a
good point. Yeah, it's infinity. So, you're right. Absolutely, that's exactly my point.
and I think the group that has struggles with that more, would be, I don't think white America has any right to say she's black or not. Black America, maybe, but I don't think they do either. But I'm not going to speak for them, right? I think again, and we see that so much, and I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. We kind of want what we want. It's the way we're trained now. It's the way we're raised. Instant gratification. We want. Nobody gets their ideal necessarily.
Right.
whether it's whether it's a spouse, whether it's your job. The great Paul Murkowski, shout out to my former boss from the press. We were all bitching one day, and he just looked at us and said, "You guys work with words, right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "How dumb are you?" I said, "I don't know. Nothing with it." He said, "They call it work because it's work. If it were fun, they would call it fun. Work is work, right? Politics is work. Everything's work. Fun is something, sometimes it can, you can get, but that's a byproduct of it. And I think we all, how many people, now, what I did find interesting, and again, I'm the first one to attack polls. And someday, if you want to go into that tonight, I mean, just we don't have time, nor should we tonight. But if you look, really what they're finding out now is interesting. Have you heard, can you name any third party candidate out there?
No.
Do you even know if the Green Party has a candidate?
I would
don't.
just assume they do, but I don't care. At this point, it means nothing to me.
You had Jill Stein, Gertrude's long lost fifth, no, whatever. And they said that people who voted third party, they polled them, and if they're either voting third party again, or they're voting for Joe Biden, and the number is pretty significant. It wasn't necessarily a big survey. So I think there's a lot of things different this election. Donald Trump is an incumbent. We know what he's done. We know what he hasn't done. I don't see any third party candidate out there being viable. I don't think as many.
Do you see any third party candidate possibly stealing a state for Trump?
No. We know them now. Kanye. Come on, what's Kanye going to steal? It's gotten down.
I mean, will 2,000 votes do it? Well, that's what I'm saying.
Let's put it like this, Brian. If that's all you can muster, if Joe Biden can only muster and losing 2,000 votes in Pennsylvania, wow.
No,
I don't think
right. I get your point
there.
Right.
You're back to the old Al Gore question.
Right.
Did Al Gore
couldn't win Tennessee?
Yes, over Bush. He couldn't even win his own state. If you can't win your own state, Florida didn't cost him the election.
Tennessee,
as not taking Tennessee did.
Right.
Now there's reasons for that, but the only thing I'll do my closing remarks now, but it's just this: when you live in scary times, and we do, you have many options. But basically, they come down to two. One is, I'm going to be scared. I am scared. And I'm too scared to act. The second is, I'm scared. I understand I'm scared, but I've got to act. This is one of those times, no matter how scared we are, if we believe, and I'm not, I often say, if you believe in the America that I believe in, I'm not going to say that tonight. If you believe in the America as outlined in the founding documents, of which we've never completely realized, I've got that, right? Written by imperfect people in imperfect times, but the value is to rise above that. This is one of those times where you do have a chance and a choice. You have the chance to make a difference, but you have to exercise your choice to vote in dangerous times. And those dangerous times may be what you find at the polls. It may be the pandemic. It may be the inconvenience. I really do feel for people, and I'm sure you might have friends like that, who have not even been out yet. That's asking a lot, right? They haven't been out anywhere much to get that vote out. And if it means, if they really need voting in person, it also means standing in line as long as it takes. In rain, in snow, knowing the fact that there may be armed vigilantes somewhere, maybe even feeling that it doesn't matter. Well, this time it does.
It does.
And I would urge everyone who can see to vote, not reluctantly, not holding their nose, for the only hope America as we know it has. That would be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Well said, Dave. And I would just want to say, as a closing note myself, folks, and I'm going to end where I started. I know how everybody is feeling about this, the tension. At least I know the tension, anxiety, and paranoia that I have in this situation. That we're all sharing this. A neighbor of mine passed away last week, and she really hated Trump. And I keep thinking, there are a lot of those type of people who die in the meantime. They never get to see World War II won. They die in 1944 and 1943, not knowing if we were going to beat Hitler. And that's why I think it's so important, because those people never got to see that. And you are another them. And I've said this before. We're all the same in a certain sense. It's why I always hated the saying. I go, thank God my family survived the car accident. The other family died, but God protected. No, it doesn't work that way. We either all die or we all live. And this is the time to do it.
I'll say the last comment, then you always make me think of something. And I do.
Okay. See what I do for you? I do wonders for your brain.
No. I just thought of something, Brian, sitting here. And maybe only I can relate to it, but it's very important to me. And I'm kind of kicking myself. I didn't think of it before as you were speaking. This will be the first election in my lifetime where I'm voting for my father directly, because he was a veteran of World War II. He did survive. But Donald Trump, I believed, said, if you interpret what he said, that he was basically worthless because he didn't do it for the money. He did it for a country.
Right.
And he did it for me. And the least I can do is return it. He certainly faced far more danger than I did in World War II.
All you have to do is get up off the couch.
By the way, now you've done it again. Ladies and gentlemen, let's demand next time, Brian, stand up. We want to see his underwear next time. Sometimes, that's why we didn't do the show last night.
Okay.
I'm off, Brian.
Listen, good to see you, Uncle Eddie. It's been great. Anybody wants to know more about Dave, just go into Google and type Uncle Eddie. That's your man. He's right over there. Uncle Eddie. Okay? Remember that. Uncle Eddie.
Where you're pointing.
Okay. I don't know where I'm pointing. It's all backwards.
Okay.
All right. Let's end on a backward note. See you, Uncle.